The Crime Syndicate has been around for a long time. Though there have been many well-known and even revered comics featuring the characters, such as Jeff Johns' Justice League run with the Forever Evil event, or Grant Morrison's classic JLA Earth 2. I believe the Infinite Frontier era is the first time they have had their own book. And this isn't too surprising, as comics featuring villains as the main characters aren't too common and don't really seem to last too long when they do show up. Nevertheless, the idea of the Crime Syndicate bears a great deal of potential, particularly if explored under the concepts presented in Grant Morrison's run. In a parallel universe that reflects the primary Earth of the DCU, a place where evil always wins in the end, where the morality of characters are more or less inverted, stories have the potential to be quite different. Gone are the heroes who swoop in to save the day from certain destruction. Instead, we get superpowered individuals who take advantage of the people and dominate the world. At the very least, it would be fairly easy to develop a series that retells classic Justice League stories, only retelling them under the guise that the Justice League is evil and will manipulate events to their own benefit. And that is actually where we begin here in the Infinite Frontier era, with the first story arc focused on the assembly of the Crime Syndicate in light of an invasion of Starro the Conqueror. Just as the Justice League first formed when faced with Starro, so too the Crime Syndicate faced the alien starfish. Only we are treated to a very different encounter, as these characters are not afraid to kill and maim in order to achieve their goals. Collateral damage is not a concern. Whereas the Justice League stood up to face the invaders, here Starro specifically targets the individual superpowered individuals. So we are presented with multiple self-serving characters, uniting under a common cause not of saving the day, but of fighting for self-preservation and their own individual glory. This creates a fun, entertaining read, albeit a little over the top. Much of the dialogue feels too deliberately grandiose, opting for almost vaudeville approach rather than any subtlety. If these characters were reflective of their Prime World counterparts in a modern setting, then they would be a bit less overt, which would be my preference. Still, I can forgive the book for being a little overdone, as it is still entertaining despite this. It's also nice to see some changes to the lineup of the Crime Syndicate in order to better reflect modern trends. Personally, I feel each iteration of the team should mirror whatever the current Justice League team is, acting as a reflection of the main universe. And that's not exactly the case here, as the Justice League is going to include members such as Black Adam and Naomi and Hawkgirl and I think Hippolyta. But this Crime Syndicate story seems to take place in the past, so I can give it a little bit of leeway there. But making the Emerald Knight in the story an evil version of John Stewart instead of Hal Jordan creates potential for a different take on the team that doesn't simply feel like a rehash of past stories. Likewise, tying Owlman's backstory into the Court of Owls is a good touch, as that is now an essential part of Batman's world. And I can't really recall if this was done in Jeff Johns' run on Justice League, but whatever the case, I'm glad it was included here. It makes for a more believable alternate take on the character, something that could potentially have happened in the main universe if things played out differently, as opposed to simply coming up with something completely different and expecting us to accept it. And that being said, I can't stand this new character design for Johnny Quick. I think it just looks bad. And I feel like the idea with this costume is that he is supposed to have broken out of Iron Heights, as he has the orange pants and the chains around his waist, and I can accept that even if I don't really care for it. But what I really dislike is that he is shirtless, and yet still has the lightning accents on his arms, as well as on his bald head, as though they are tattoos. Goggles are acceptable, I guess, but I really don't like the lightning bolts coming off of them. As a whole, all of it combined makes for a character design that I think is trying far too hard to be different and edgy, and it just turns out ugly instead, making the character look more goofy than anything. And as for the backup stories, they work quite well, serving as short origin stories for the characters, we get a glimpse into how and why they are different from their Justice League counterparts. Though fairly short, these backup stories don't need to be any longer than they are, serving to give us a little bit of character development and background in a way that manages to supplement the main story quite well. In fact, they are placed very appropriately, as Ultraman is the primary focus of the first issue, and that's where his origin features, while Owlman is a little bit more prominent in the second issue, and that's where his origin is placed. Hopefully this thought towards backup placement and synergy continues, as it does a really good job of reinforcing the main story, making for a satisfying read. It's also worth noting the brilliant touch to have Ultraman's origin mirror the origin presented in All-Star Superman, with the first page by Brian Hitch acting as a one-to-one recreation of the page done by Frank Quitely. It was a clever touch and very well done, elevating the book's presentation. And aside from the aforementioned over-the-top dialogue and some bad character designs, there are a couple of other problems that I had with the books. For instance, in issue 2, there is a sequence where Ultraman and Superwoman are fighting. Johnny Quick shows up with a Starro on his chest, and the stage is set for a big confrontation. And then suddenly there are these two unidentified superheroes alongside Johnny Quick who just came out of nowhere. I went back and forth over both issues and couldn't find any reference to them anywhere prior to this. They just suddenly appeared in this one panel. They aren't given names, their designs aren't obvious to me who they are supposed to mirror, and it isn't obvious where they came from. And on top of that, they don't even seem to serve any purpose. It's very odd, and it really took me out of the story. I'm not sure what happened in the writing and art process, but I feel like something was lost along the way and editorial didn't catch it. Maybe they were in earlier pages that were cut? And you'll notice that their design isn't even completely consistent across the two panels in which they appear, assuming that these aren't completely different characters who also appear for only a single panel with no explanation and serve no real purpose. And maybe the artist changed the FBI agents from earlier into superheroes on accident and no one caught it? Whatever the case, it threw me off and I wound up focusing on it far too much. And the other complaint I had is admittedly fairly minor, and that is the inclusion of nonsense editorial notes. Now, I wouldn't consider this a flaw per se, as it doesn't really affect the story and different people will have different experiences with it, but for me, it was a bad joke that they just couldn't let go of. What I'm talking about is the standard editorial notes that will often appear in comics that give readers context for what is happening. So for instance, a current issue of Batman might mention something that happened years ago, and new readers might not be familiar with it. So there will be an editor's note that says, as seen in New 52 Batman Volume 1, or as seen in Batman issue 656. Here, the characters will mention something, and then there will be an editor's note that says something like, for more on the Talons, read Owlman Who's Who, Volume 1, in stores nowhere. They reference non-existent books. At the very least, for me, it just doesn't fit the tone of the book, so it feels a little out of place. Now, I could be more forgiving of this, except they do it 3 or 4 times across these 2 issues, making it a reoccurring joke that just doesn't work. Kind of like a bad Family Guy skit.
It was a joke! I was just making a joke!
That's your sense of humor?
I was just kidding. God.
But, like I said, it's minor, I can ignore it, and I'm sure a lot of readers won't care, so I don't necessarily hold it against the book. I just really don't care for it. And overall, this is a book that is far from perfect, but it's still entertaining despite its flaws. There are concepts I would love to explore if I was writing the book. Revisiting old Justice League stories with a Crime Syndicate bent, or maybe seeing the team change to mirror the main Justice League title with an evil lens. And it's nice to see some of that shining through here. Whether or not the series continues to mirror classic Justice League stories remains to be seen, but for now, it provides an interesting alternate take on a familiar tale. Now, while editing this video, I realized that I had somehow completely missed that this is a limited series. This is only going to be 6 issues long. I haven't followed any of the promotional material for the series, I haven't read any interviews with any of the creators or anything like that. And so, based solely off of reading the first 2 issues and knowing that this is only going to be 6 issues long, I feel like they're just going to cover the origin of the Crime Syndicate. That is a little bit disappointing, as I feel like there is a lot of potential here for more, but at the same time I can appreciate that they have a specific story that they want to tell, and they're going to stick solely to that. While Crime Syndicate isn't my favorite book on the stands, it's good comic book fun, and I am enjoying it well enough that I will likely continue reading if it remains at this level. Be sure to help me out by hitting like and subscribe, leave a comment to let me know your thoughts, and until next time, this is Uncle Joel saying, stay tangible.